see if we can get tickets.
So anyway, and this is Wanda right here, and she's going to be our pointer.
Okay.
So our Vanna. So I want to tell you about the building that you're standing in. This is the youngest building on the property and the only brick building on the property. So Dr. Hardman is right here by the front door. He was our 65th governor, and when he bought this farm in 1903, he had one goal in mind, and that was to start a dairy venture. But this is his governor's elect introduction to Georgia. This is a 1926 newspaper article. And so on the top right is his wife, Emma. Top left is his daughter, Josephine. That's her senior year in high school. And this is the family. So, like I said, he was our governor, our 65th governor, and served for 2 terms. A term back then was 2 years. So this is 26, so he served from 27 to 29 and 29 to 31. But again, back to the original goal, and that was to build a dairy farm. So Captain Nichols is the first owner of the property. He serves in the Civil War on the Confederate side, doesn't take a single bullet, but he does come home with malaria. Home for him is Milledgeville, Georgia. So in Georgia, we say that is below the gnat line, way, way down there, almost to the coast. And so not a great place to convalesce from malaria. And so he is up visiting during the course of the war at a place called White Sulphur Springs. And that they believed at the time that mineral water would cure you. Okay, if that's what you want to go with, fine, that's great. So he's taking the mineral water, and someone says, have you been to the valley? No, he's a South Georgia boy. He doesn't know anything about that. So they said, well, you should go visit. So he comes up here, and imagine if you can, no Highway 75 and no Highway 17. All he sees is birds, and he falls in love. So he starts thinking, this could be my exit strategy after the war. So in fact, that is what he does. He moves up here with his wife, Kate, his daughter, Anna Ruby, and his mother-in-law. Now, when I say he brings his mother-in-law, most of the men in the group quietly go, why does he do that? Well, because he has a very good reason, and we'll talk about that when we get in the mansion, okay? So how is it that he builds this mansion and he buys up 2,600 acres in which he does? He buys up this practically the whole valley, if he is a Confederate. Because how much is Confederate money worth at the end of the war? Yeah. Zero. So what happens is that he inherits from an uncle in Connecticut. That's federal money, and that's worth something. He inherits about $142,000, which turns out to be about $3.5 to $4 million today. That's how he's able to do all of this. And so this is the only family that lives in the mansion year-round, okay? The other 2 families only use this as their little summer home. Through some major life events, Captain Nichols decides to sell out. He sells to Honeycutt. Then Honeycutt in 1903 sells out to Dr. Hardman. Dr. Hardman already owned 14 farms, 10 orchards, First National Bank of Commerce, and a telephone company. And when I say he was a physician, he wasn't a self-appointed country doctor. He studied in London. His brother was a surgeon and his father was a physician. They were brilliant and they were rich. Okay, so he buys this farm in 1903 again to start a dairy farm, and he wanted the very best cows. So he builds this dairy barn that's 190 feet long and 40 feet wide. It was state of the art. I personally think it still is. It could milk up to 65 cows at one time. In 1999, the great-grandchildren of Dr. Hardman came to a decision, and that was this. We can't do this anymore. We can barely keep the grass cut, let alone keep everything up, and fixed up. It was just constant money. And so they decided to give to the state of Georgia 173 acres. 110 on this side, 63 on this side, and that included the mound. And we're very glad that they did.
That's the Hardman Mansion right there.
So the trees that you see on the right and left are black walnut trees. That's what you see all over the ground. The early settlers were encouraged to plant these trees because the thinking was you can use every single part. So the nuts were for your hogs. Black walnuts are very rich. And so you would feed your hogs the nuts. Of course, the wood from the trees for building. And then the shucks of the black walnuts for staining the wood. Captain Nichols, first owner. We have pictures of the original mansion. The front yard went all the way out to the mound. And so one day he walks out the front door and says, you know, I want a summer house out there on the mound. We call it a gazebo, but he called it a summer house. Not only that, he wants fresh running water to be out there to the mound. Inside the horse barn, he pipes in water to the kitchen and then out to the mound because he wanted fresh running water to the mound. There is a pipe, the original pipe, still right there beside the horse barn, so it's pretty incredible. So there's always questions about, well, did he really know what that was when he did that? And so I don't know, but here's what I do know. People back then would buy a piece of property and they did with it what they wanted to do with it. Okay, people were not asking neighbors like, what should I do? What should I do? They just enjoyed their property. And so now let's fast forward to 1915. Dr. Hardman is now the owner of the property. Dr. Hardman has convened a team from New York, from the Hay Museum, to do an archaeological dig. And one day, and they're continuing to do the dig. They started on the back side of the mound. They get about a third of the way in. They discover 75 graves, just like that. Okay, so that answers that burning question of what is it? It is a burial mound. It is not a ceremonial mound, meaning it's not hollow inside. So they process the graves, and what they think they're going to find is that it's Creek or Cherokee. It's none of that. These graves date back to the Mississippian period. They're called the mound builders. Okay, well, what does that mean? That's 1,000 years before the Creek and the Cherokee ever got here. So they buried quite differently from us. We dig the hole, put you in it, cover you up. Well, they didn't do that. They would just lay you out, and they needed to be near soft dirt. So the Chattahoochee River's right behind the mound. They needed to be able to scoop the dirt and then cover you up, thus creating the mound. So the team comes to Dr. Hardman one day and says, we're concerned. We're hearing these rumors. Again, you said it correctly. World War I has already begun in Europe, and they want to leave and go back to New York. And so they began to pack up the artifacts, and Dr. Hardman said, what are you doing? They said, well, we're taking all these artifacts back with us. And he said, no, we don't want anything to leave the mound. We want the artifacts to stay with the mound. That is, in fact, not what happened. They did take the artifacts back to New York, and those artifacts stayed there for a time. And then their doors closed. We don't know why their doors closed, possibly from the Great Depression. At that point, the artifacts went to the Smithsonian, and that's where they are today. So that is the story about the mound. Now, so the story is, did the first owner, did he know that, Captain Nichols know that that was an Indian mound? Probably, yes. But here's my personal opinion. Had he not put that summer house out there?
Somebody might have just bulldozed it, yeah.
Of course, because as more and more people came into the valley, they're trying to survive. They're trying to feed their families, to farm. And if they happen to have a mound on their property, I'm trying to feed my children. Now what? So what are they going to do? They're going to plow it up. I personally believe that summer house saved that mound. That's just me. I really do. Because when they discovered that those graves dated back to the Mississippian period in 1915, that meant what that even confirmed even further was that this whole valley had been in Indian civilization for a long, long time, 1,000 years before the Creek or Cherokee ever got here.
Right.
Okay, and the truth is also that there were lots of mounds up and down the valley, lots and lots. But yes, but now there's like two, and then this one, and there are 2 or 3, and they're on private property. So we're glad that he put this up there. So it is the second most photographed place in Georgia. So can you guess the first? Nope. Think of something in Atlanta.
Oh, Stone Mountain.
Yes, Stone Mountain. So Stone Mountain's the most photographed place in Georgia, and this is the second.
I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah. Yeah, you see people pulled over all day long. When Captain Nichols left this mansion, he took 2 things: a suitcase in this hand and a suitcase in this hand. What am I trying to say? He took nothing. He took nothing. So did Honeycutt, and so did the Hardmans. So what you're about to see in this mansion is original. This is not a restoration type mansion. This is a preservation. So if it looks ancient, it is. It is. So when you go to Charleston and Savannah, and those are beautiful places, and I love them, but often they will say, oh, this is reproduction carpet and reproduction wallpaper, reproduction. Nothing is reproduced in this mansion. So anyway, there was a very beautiful doorbell on the outside here, but someone liked it. Would you ring this for me, dear? Would you ring it for me?
You gotta
Pull it. You got to pull it.
I just didn't know if you were kidding me or not.
No, I'm not. It's not going to do anything. Very good. Very good. Thank you. All right. Now, the screens that you see on the windows and doors were added by Dr. Hardman because he's a physician and he gets it about flies and mosquitoes and germs.
Right.
On the dining room, there is a screen door. This is called flash glass, and this is part of the Italian influence of the home. So it's made by taking 2 pieces of glass, a lot of gold dust in the middle, heat it, and you get the ruby color. Then it's placed on the etching wheel and hand etched out piece by piece so the pattern flows all the way around. Now, the front door and the back door are black walnut made here on the property, and this was their security system. This is what kept the boogers out. And then for an extra layer of security, they put these iron hooks here, and they would just slide a stick in the door. And that was it. So amazing. The walls are plaster. The molding and the medallions are all plaster. Typically, when you go into a home of this period, you would see a picture reel. For whatever reason, they elected not to do that. Instead, they placed these ceramic buttons into the plaster while it was still wet. It would dry, and then you could move your pictures around, but you could not add additional picture books. So all the artwork in the mansion is original. The floors are Georgia heart of pine, as well are the interior doors. Look at the hinges, pay close attention. Very fancy and very detailed. All right, let's go to the formal parlor. So for me, the showpiece of this formal parlor is this beautiful fireplace. Now, for some reason, they believed that painted slate was more bougie than the actual marble, Italian marble. So all of that is painted. I personally think it's the best paint job I've ever seen. But it's the interior of the fireplace that's so interesting. Does anything stand out? What is that thing in the bottom?
That catches for, yeah, it's probably a coal fireplace.
So it is a coal burning fireplace, okay? Because they believe that coal burns hotter and brighter. But you said he owns 2,600 acres when he moved up here. He buys up all this land. He owns the valley.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you just burn wood? Because when you have money, you have choices. So he chose to burn coal. Now, where's the nearest coal mine? There are none. So that means, you gotta send enough wagons down to Gainesville to get Kentucky, Pennsylvania, wherever you can get it, enough coal to keep 8 fireplaces going all winter long. Well, the draperies that you see are all silk and they are imported from Italy. Silk and sunshine don't always do well, and this room happens to get all morning sun. So some rooms, the silk drapes are doing much better than these. Now, the portrait over the piano is of Dr. Hardman. This is his portrait as governor that hangs in the Capitol in Atlanta. The piano is a gift from the Hardman estate. We think it's the oldest piece in the house, dating back to about 1834. And we still play it at Christmas time. We have it tuned every November, and we play it for when we have Victorian Christmas here in the mansion. So in just a few weeks, we'll have a 10-foot tree right here that will decorate full Victorian, and it's amazing. So I want to tell you about the second love story. I told you about the first love story, and that was Captain Nichols building this beautiful mansion for his wife, Kay. But there's a second love story, and that's between Dr. Hardman and Emma. He had courted Emma from Valdosta, Georgia for about 6 years. And she just was like, buddy, are you ever going to ask me to marry you? And she had received a proposal from Mr. Clark down in Valdosta. So she accepted him and went home to Valdosta. Dr. Hardman found out about it, and he's not happy. So he writes her a letter. This is the original letter. I'm going to read it to you. Dear Miss Emma, yours received several days ago, and I must confess to you that it was a shock, and times make it only more profound. I do not wish to make you or anyone unhappy if I called, but I hope you will pardon me for saying I love you, and I'm very anxious to see you. Can I see you? I will come on first train. Yours very sincerely, Dr. Hardman, Commerce, Georgia, 3/10/1907. So wait, when did you say he bought this? 1903. He buys this property in 1903. It's 1907, buddy. Let's get with the program. So, anyway, he rushes down there, and don't you know that train stopped in every little town? Every little town, and he's so anxious to get down there. So he goes in, and I'm sure he said, can we talk? And so he talks to her. Now, this is what we found out from Lambertine the Fourth. Okay, so he's Lambertine Senior. We had Lambertine the Fourth here on the property. He says that her mother told her, this is how it's going to work. We know that he's on the way. Okay, the letter got there before the train. And so she says, you're going to accept Dr. Hardman. Okay, he's a better match for you. And so she declined Mr. Clark, and so it was all set. But I think she maybe egged him on just a little. So anyway, long story short, she accepts Dr. Hardman. She declines Mr. Clark. But don't you know that she'd already been having all the teas and the luncheons and all the things that Southern gals have? She'd already bought her gown. The gown was already purchased. But, you know, now it's a whole new guy. And so I get the question, well, is Emma his first wife? Yes, yes. Remember, he's going, doing, selling. He was considered the most eligible bachelor in Georgia. So, in fact, there was a little secret bet between Dr. Hardman and his pastor. Okay, the bet was this: you'll never get married because you won't slow down long enough to get married. But if you do, you're going to owe my congregation $1,000. Okay, which is about, I've already done the math, it's about $42,000 a day. So
wow.
He lost the bet. It went statewide, their engagement announcement. So they weren't engaged for very long. Emma made sure of that. So they got married quickly. But they were married for 30 years and had 4 children. Oh, wow. It only ended because he passed. Because now he's 80.
Yeah.
Ish. So, so she's the first wife, and they were married for 30 years. So they loved this mansion so much that they did a lottery during the summers to see which cousins and aunts and uncles gets to come which week. So welcome to the family parlor. The portrait that you see over the fireplace is Anna Ruby. She was born in 1860, and we think she's about 10 years old in this portrait. This is a little bit lightened up version of it. That is the original oil painting, and it is the original frame. So we think it's a treasure. So Captain Nichols, her father, is part of the Governor's Horse Guard. And what does that mean? That means he serves in the capacity of procuring horses and supplies for the Confederacy. So this is what I used to also tell my 5th grade, especially the boys. They love this part. In the beginning of the Civil War, the Southern gentlemen had an ace in the hole. And what was that? They could ride and shoot at the same time and not fall off. Okay, that's what they could do. At the beginning, they did it better than anybody. Now, obviously, the Union caught on to that and whipped us soundly, which was another big surprise for my 5th graders. We lost that war? Yes, we did. Badly, we lost that war. So, because he's an excellent writer, he teaches her everything, which tells us why she's, in the second portrait, she's wearing her riding habit. So they're out riding on the property one day, and they come upon the double waterfall. He owns the whole valley, so wherever they ride, they own it, right? So, or he does. And so they come upon the waterfall, and he's just taken aback. He's, oh my dear, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, except for you. And I believe I'm going to name these waterfalls after you. And he does. So that's how Anna Ruby Falls is named for this little girl. Now, she is the only surviving child of Kate and Captain Nichols. And so because of that, by virtue of that, she's the center of the universe. We will know the original bed based on where we see this little night light. So if you look out this window and to the right, you will see a little red shed. That's the gas house. That's where it happened. So I personally can't imagine having an open flame over my bed, but that's what they did, right? The thing I want to show you over here is this door. What's the big deal about a door? It leads to a walk-in closet. This is unheard of for the times. So all the little hooks you see are original. And again, when you think about this valley, 4 years after the Civil War, you only have 2 outfits, the one you're wearing and the one you're washing. You don't even have Sunday clothes. So this is incredible. Every bedroom has a walk-in closet. So remember about the cistern that I told you up on the hill? This is, I think, what makes this mansion just over the top. Running water inside your mansion. Unreal. So, from the cistern, he pipes in water to the kitchen. There's a tank. So think very crude hot water heater, no insulation. Water goes into the tank, and then there's 2 pipes and some valves. So you open the valve, and that pipe lets the water run into the holding tank of the stove. It fills up and then heats. Then open the second pipe, second valve, back into the tank, and you have hot and cold running water in your mansion. Unbelievable. When you think about people living in the valley are dipping out of a creek or a well, if they're lucky, and they're grateful. So this is how you would turn it on and off. And these little cups are for your rings. So the ladies would take off their rings, isn't that great? Yeah. And put it in the cup, so you don't wash them down the drain. And there's a marble sink in every single bedroom. So, you were talking about the chest. So do you know the significance of the rounded top, the camelback?
No, but I always think of them as far as seagoing chests, so.
Right, and so if this happened to be yours, this would be considered the designer luggage of the day because of the rolled top. No other luggage could be stacked on top of this, okay? Keep your luggage off my luggage.
It's pretty cool.
A lot of history. Very beautiful. Highly recommend you come check it out. If you're a Georgia resident, go to the local library and check out the free pass for historic places. Other than that, I think it's like $13 for adults to get in. All right, guys, I want to say thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps us out. See ya on the next one.